Hi all, welcome to Spring MVC tutorial series. So in this video we'll be creating our first front controller in a Spring MVC applications. This is the third video of that series. In the last two videos we have understand about Spring MVC and its architectures. In the next second video we have created our set up our Spring MVC project on STS using Maven. So before going ahead with the video, I will suggest you to watch this setup video to create or to set up the MVC project in your STS. Now, what other topic we will be covering in this video is we will be setting up our front controller in the MVC applications, and we will be understanding what is actually a front controller means and what is its use cases, and we will be using DispatcherServlet as a front controller, and we will be understanding how to initialize that DispatcherServlet, and later on we will be configuring our application, and next we will run the application. Before going ahead with the video, I request you please subscribe to the channel to get videos on Spring Boot microservices, REST API, Spring MVC, and lot more thing about software development terminologies. So let's get started. So now what is actually a front controller means? Suppose you are having a website or the application called something called student.com. When someone hit something student.com slash some API like save or update or finds, then your front controller will handle those requests, or it will transfer to the correct controller. Suppose you have lot of controller like controller 1, 2, controller 3. Controller 1 is responsible for the saving the things. Controller 2 is responsible for getting the information, and the client or any user hit the API call / save. Then the front controller, which is the, we can say, the entry point or each and every request, it will handle and it will transfer to the correct controller, and then that controller will share the response, and then front controller will share back to that response to the client or the user. Now the question is which controller or the front controller should we use? So in the Spring we have a front controller called DispatcherServlet, but we no need to create that DispatcherServlet controller, or we can say the front controller, because the Spring framework developer have already created that. We just need to enable that, or we just need to use that DispatcherServlet. So from where we'll get that, you can type as Control Shift T, then you can search as DispatcherServlet. You can see this is the front controller we'll be using in the application. Or now let's use this in our applications. So we'll be going to that web.xml file. So before that, a quick recap is that we have one form.xml file where we have added dependency called Jakarta Servlet and the Spring Web MVC, because we will be dealing with the MVC application, and we have used Java 17, and we will be using Spring 6 versions. So it is suggested to watch this setup video if you face any type of issue regarding the setup. Now we'll be going to this web.xml file. We'll just first change this application name, or the display name. We'll be keeping it as Spring Web Application. Now we need to use that DispatcherServlet, or you need to set up the DispatcherServlet. For that, we need to write as servlet tag. Inside the servlet tag, we need to mention the servlet name. So we'll be writing is as an my dispatcher servlet, or we can mention as front controller. Now we need to specify the class from where this servlet is coming, or we can say that dispatcher servlet fully qualified path. So I will again press Ctrl Shift T, go to dispatcher servlet, and I will do the right click and copy qualified name. Then I will paste it. So with this, doing this, we have like initialized or used the dispatcher servlet, but how to tell that whenever any request is coming, like we have mentioned that slash or the student.com. So how to map that request to this dispatcher servlet? For that, we have annotation called servlet mapping. Then within this servlet mapping, we need to mention that which front controller will handle those type of requests and the URL pattern. So I have mentioned that, and like that, any request that comes with student.com slash something called save info or any other URL, then this front controller will handle those requests. And when this dispatcher servlet will be initialized, so we want to doing this, it will initialized when any first API is seated, then only it will initialized. Or if you want that when it is loaded or the application loaded, that time you want to initialize, so you can mention load on startup and one, so it will initialized for one time only. Now the dispatcher servlet is ready, but your application should have a configuration file, because this dispatcher servlet will look for the configuration, and from that configuration file it will create any type of beans or other, it will use other configuration file. So this dispatcher servlet or the web.xml file is expecting a configuration that started with servlet name slash or hyphen servlet. So it will be something like your servlet name slash servlet.xml file. So I'll create that. So I'll go to this web.inf and new, then file, and hyphen servlet.xml. Now will we add the standard definition of this project. Let me add that. So I added all the like beans configuration or the schema like context beans. So now let's run the application. To run it, we'll do right click and run on server, and will be run on my test servers that we have created on our last application. Then finish. This my test server is starting, and in the console we'll get all the logs. So it is still starting the test server. You can check on the button corner starting my. So in the console we see that initialized servlet front controller dispatcher and initialization has been completed. So means the dispatcher servlet is the fully initialized and ready to use. So server is starting up. If you go to the tab, so localhost 8080 and my web project, so it is being printed displayed as an hello world. So we see that in this index.jsp we have the text called hello world. So in the next video we'll be understanding, or we'll be creating our first MVC controller, and we'll be understanding what this web application context or we can say that web application context as a container, and what is it use cases. So please subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching the video.